Welcome to the Shame Free Zone. I'm Veronica Monet, and my guest today is Carly Coe. Carly, welcome. You're beaming in all the way from Bordeaux, France today.
Yes, I am 1 hour from Bordeaux in the countryside.
Oh my God, the French countryside. What's the weather like there today?
It's rainy, like it's been
Oh,
in the last few weeks, but we've had occasional little days of sunshine, but definitely
well,
not California.
it's too bad you can't send a little of that rain over here because right in California, we're kind of in the middle of a drought.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah. So I'm going to read a little bit about your bio just so that our viewers know a little more about you, and then we'll dive into this interview. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay, great. So, Carly Coe is a certified Hatha instructor, Hatha Yoga instructor, and she's a somatic movement and expressive arts therapist. She also does Reiki and therapeutic touch. And we're going to be talking a little bit today about embodiment. Um, Carly Coe helps people listen to the wisdom in their own bodies and make choices that align with the calling of their higher selves. And she works with people who may experience disconnection from the body, fears, blockages, or self doubt, or who are on a path to become more embodied and self realized beings. Actually, I think all of us have some sort of a block, no matter how self realized we think we are at this point. So I think today's going to be a lot of fun. And I think it's also going to be really helpful because so many of us are having a lot of stress in this time of the pandemic. So, and as I pointed out, she's in Bordeaux, France. She kind of goes back and forth between San Francisco and France. So, Carly, I'm just so excited that you're joining me here in the Shame Free Zone. And I would love for you to tell me just a little bit more about yourself. Like, why France?
It was no choice of mine. No, yeah, I would say that I live about a third of the time in France and two-thirds of the time in Bolinas in the San Francisco Bay Area. Um, my son lives in France, who is 10, and I actually used to travel a lot. I was a performer. So 20 years ago, I went to Italy, spent 10 years wandering around Italy, and then I went to France where I did circus and theater school in Paris. And there I met the father of my child literally 1 month after I arrived. And
Was
that,
he also in the circus?
no, he wasn't. He's a crazy, but he's a mainly a constructor, but he does like music and theater and like everything.
Oh,
But
wow.
and spoke only French at the time, which I didn't understand. Luckily, he spoke a lot because I was just like, mm-hmm, oui, mm-hmm, I
It
love your
sounds,
blue eyes, oui.
it sounds terribly romantic.
Yeah, so yeah, I learned quickly, and he ended up being the father of my child, so that kind of, created a lifelong link. And
Absolutely.
we're not together anymore, so I
These
have a
things happen.
true, very true.
Yeah.
So I have a house out here close by to where his house is, so I can bring my son to school when I'm here and be with my son. And
Yeah.
3 years ago, I really felt called to go to the Bay Area, even though it was a very, 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 very hard decision. But I needed to go and to continue on with what was important and what was my purpose. So I've found this thing of moving back and forth every 2 months, 2.5 months. I come here for a month, more or
Yeah.
less, and somehow it's working. So
I I think it sounds like a really great life adventure. I'm wondering how you got involved in somatics. Do you consider yourself a dancer, or you're talking about being in the circus? What were you doing in the circus?
um, yeah, I was. I'll try and make as short as possible. I actually ended up in the circus world out of necessity because I wanted to travel. So I ended up traveling with a guy who was a street performer in the beginning. And to be able to make money we actually would go in the street, and he was a juggler. And so I learned to juggle in the forest in Italy. And then we would go in the evening out into the street and create a street show, and, have like 100 people, and we'd pass the hat. And then that was how we lived. So we ended up just continuing on that way. And then I did more circus stuff. My thing was walking a tightrope, but it was actually like a pole held between two volunteers, and I would walk in front of it and juggle fire. So I walk on top of it, juggle fire. Yeah. So that was my big act.
Wow. Oh my God, do you have any video of this?
Yeah, it's all on my YouTube. There are very old videos of all that.
Okay, well, I'm going to want to post a couple of those links below this interview so the viewers can see you on the circus. That's amazing. So what is it that obviously you've actually been very embodied, living in your body for quite a few years. When you're working with your clients, helping them to get embodied, what are the major obstacles that you see people have?
A lot of people just feel disconnected completely to their body, or they don't recognize what their body's saying. And, I think that we've actually been trained since childhood to ignore our bodies. Even simply like at school, for example, I think of my 10-year-old son. If he has to go to the bathroom, he's not allowed to go to the bathroom until recreation time. They're sitting there like fussy in their seats. They want to move. They're not allowed to move. You have to sit at your desk. All these things that are just, at some point, we just get disconnected from what our body actually is saying and what it wants and needs. So that's probably one of them. And so most people, when they hear something about their body, it's usually because their body's in pain. And it's like their body's like, oh, help, I need attention now. And that's the only time they actually bring attention to the body. Yeah. Or it's an exteriorized thing where it's like, I look fat, I'm getting, I've got rolls on my belly, I'm getting wrinkles, or there's a sickness that comes up. So usually it's a negative aspect that will force people to start connecting to their bodies, I've noticed. Wow. Yeah.
So Carly, I have a habit of sitting at my desk, not going to the bathroom when I need to go. How would you break me of that habit?
Well, one, I'd probably say check in if you need to go to the bathroom, but it is good also to know how to hold it a little bit. But
I know, but what you said about your son being
not only that, it's when we're sitting. Yeah, go ahead.
I really keyed in on what you said about your son being taught to sit at his desk and only get to go to the bathroom when he gets permission to go to the bathroom. And I agree with you. I think that is where it starts. I know I used to tell my dad that I was hungry or cold or tired, and he used to say, no, you're not. So I got a message very early on that whatever I was experiencing in my body wasn't actually happening, or it was wrong to say that it was happening, and it was weak to admit that it was happening. So I think for some of us that, that rigidity about disconnecting with the body and falling in line with whatever the rules are, it stays with us into adulthood. So yes, I hear that it's good to know how to hold it. But what if that just becomes a chronic thing, that as an adult, you're sitting at your desk rigidly, not hydrating, not going to the bathroom? What if you're ignoring the body's impulses to sleep? How can we start to tune in?
Well, in the beginning, when we're not necessarily connected to the body, we don't recognize that the body's saying something. So it has to probably become something that's organized beforehand, where it's like you set an alarm, and every hour you just let the alarm ring and you check in with the body, for example. Oh, I have this little bell. Oh, what is it? Okay. Then just like take a second, close your eyes. How is my body feeling? Where am I feeling tensions? Oh, do I have to pee? Oh, do I need to adjust? Oh, am I slouching like this since an hour? And maybe I need to stretch a little, and maybe I need to, just doing this little body scan. Like, it's helpful even just to close your eyes for a second and just do a quick body scan and say, okay, how am I feeling physically right now? Do I feel any tensions? Do I need to go to the bathroom? Body, what do you need? And even this question, body, what do you need? It sounds a little bit absurd, but if we trust that our body will tell us, our higher knowing is going to respond. And it will be like, oh, body actually wants to go take a 5-minute walk and come back and pee and drink a glass of water.
Do you think that there's a fear? Like I sometimes wonder, how did we get to be so disembodied and so rigid? I remember watching this film. It was actually a documentary about making a film, and the film was about Columbus coming to America, and they had hired a bunch of Native American actors to play Native Americans. I mean, as they well should have. But they still had to hire a coach to come in and teach them how to be more embodied, closer to what Native Americans might have been like 500 years ago. And it really struck me because I was thinking, wow, and look at how the contrast between the indigenous people being in their bodies and the white, I'm not going to call them settlers, conquerors, the people that came over in those boats to oppress this continent. So stiff, so rigid. I wonder sometimes if there aren't some unspoken rules about that rigidity, keeping us out of some taboo territory, like pleasure, like desire. Because if you start tuning into the body, it might not always want to do what the rules say you should do, because maybe it wants to take a nap during the day. I mean, I don't know. I'm just throwing this out there. And I know that was kind of a lot that I put there, but I'd be really interested in your thoughts about what I just shared.
Yeah, as if we go back to the moment that you spoke about the Native Americans and being more embodied, what came up for me is that I'm not really a historian, so I don't know exactly at what period, but there was something at a time where it was looked down upon to be a worker and to work in the fields and to work outside and to do things and to carry things and to be manual. And so there was something that turned into like a denial of using the body for things, because that symbolized, being poor or manual workers. And then there was, I also thinking about corsets, at the time. And there was this whole thing about bringing very upwards to the body. And then also somatically would be bringing in a lot more attention to the shoulders and into the head. And then we were also a lot more concentrated on the mind and our mental capacities, and going more and more into that. And so the more we are in our mind, the less we are actually anchored and grounded to the ground. And so when I think about Native Americans and they said, oh, they did a whole embodiment practice, the first thing that came to my mind is like their feet are probably not feeling the ground.
Yeah.
And if you think of a Native American who is probably partially on hands and knees, walking, moving around like an animal in the forest, their center of gravity is much lower, and their energy is much further down. And when we're sitting in front of our computer screens, for example, we're bringing all the energy up here. And what we're also doing is we're ending up obviously with all these tensions between our shoulder blades and in our shoulders, just because the energy is just circulating up here and it's not circulating down into our bodies.
I love how you just reframed the corset for me. I never thought of it as an instrument for cutting you off from your nether regions and raising all of your chi up into this area. But obviously that is it. And then the ridiculous shoes that the women of that era were wearing too. And we still have ridiculous shoes, of course. But there is, when you put the sole of your foot flat on Mother Earth, it does create a very different sensation than even wearing an athletic shoe.
Yeah, I mean, even scientifically, the electromagnetic vibration of the Earth actually ends up like, I think it's synchronizing or resonating with our own, and so we actually feel more aligned and more stable and calm when we actually place our foot on the ground. Like, technically and literally scientifically, it creates a literal psychosomatic shift for us. So
I hope you'll excuse my humor, but I was just envisioning world peace by going barefoot.
hippie revolution again.
Huh?
those hippies.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so I want to ask you, one of the things you and I had talked about before we went on the air was that we wanted to give people some tools for their stress levels. There's a lot of stress right now. We've got authoritarianism on the rise around the globe. We've got an American election, which is very contentious. We've got a lot of polarization in just online. It really doesn't matter what country you're in. Things have gotten really polarized in discussions. People are sometimes having difficulty understanding what's real, what's not real. And then, of course, the global pandemic, which has been a real stressor for people. So I'm just wondering, could you possibly give us some advice from your wisdom, and then also maybe lead us through an exercise today that would help us?
Sure. I guess I'll start with just my personal experience of being in COVID, and I was in California most of the time. And I actually had like one of my best times of my life during the COVID period, and it's still more or less COVID period right now. And I really enjoyed the slowing down part, and I really ended up connecting to nature a lot more and shifting a lot of things in my own life about what was important. And I know there's a lot of people that aren't necessarily in nature or in gorgeous spaces where I was, and have families and have jobs and all that. So one thing that a little tool that I actually did that I really loved and that has saved me a lot is actually creating a schedule in my day where I create a balanced schedule. So I'll wake up in the morning and I'll have my hot chocolate and I'll sit there and I'll think, okay, what are all the things I want to do today? And, I was also working and creating, some online stuff. So I'd have these sections of work time, but then I would say, okay, I'm working 2 hours and then I'm going to do 15-minute activity. Okay. Is it out gardening or is it dancing? I consider myself, that's one of my favorite things in the world is to dance. And so I would just put on my headphones and dance. Or, it might be, okay, I need to spend time with my son during this time. And I also want to exercise. Okay, let's go play soccer, So a lot of it was literally writing down a schedule and scheduling in time for self-care and balancing out sitting time with movement time. And I noticed what saved me the most was at every day around 4:30, I would say, okay, time to go out into nature, do a little exercise and just be in nature from 4:30 to 6:30 before dinner time. And that was such a wonderful savior. When I was sitting on the computer for, 4 or 5 hours a day. I know a lot of people are sitting 8 hours a day, but
Or
that was
longer. Or longer. But so yes, not everybody can get out into nature. Some people are stuck in urban areas where they're just surrounded by concrete. Would it help at all for them to have some house plants?
Oh yeah, totally. So nature, what it is it's life. Everything that is alive reflects life for us. And when we are in nature, we are surrounded by so much life that it actually makes us feel more alive. And so just having living things in your house, plants, there is something that it will already, obviously, between what is it, the carbon dioxide oxygen exchange, but and purifying the air, which is pretty important, but just being around living, vibrating beings is actually wonderful. And then being able to even spend the time to care for those plants and just creating a relationship with the natural world, even if it's just like this orchid that you have, and checking on it, or this other plant, making sure the sun, it has enough sun and the right soil, etc. You end up being able to actually create a relationship with a non-human being that can be very nurturing at the same time. And then once you get like 2 plants, then you end up getting addicted, and then you get, more and more plants usually. But yeah, and then there can also just be maybe after a computer moment, just, I mean, we could do a mini idea of a visualization that someone could do for 5 minutes, for example.
That'd be great. That'd be great. Do you want to lead us through that?
Sure. Okay.
Okay.
So let's see here. Let's imagine that you just got done doing some computer work or something, or even feeling a little stressed or anxious, or just that common little tension in the shoulders and the shoulder blades. And this can be done laying down or seated. It might be good just to even lay down for a minute, 5 minutes. And if you can't, then just do it seated, but place your feet really on the ground. And then the first thing to do would just be to start connecting to your breath. So just doing a deep inhale, 3 times, deep inhale, and a deep exhale. And 2 more times. And as you do it, just really slowing it down and bringing all your attention to the breath. One last time. And then start doing a body scan. Let's just start out with our feet. We're going to bring our energy down to our feet. And notice if your feet are on the floor, or if they're laying down, or I'm seated cross-legged right now, so I'm feeling the sides of my feet touching the ground. So just feeling them, and as if wherever your thoughts go, that's where your energy goes. So what you're doing with your energy is you're helping that energy circulate in that area of the body just by thinking of it. So you're feeling your feet, and then going up and just noticing how those feel, and how your ankles or your calves and your knees, going up and noticing your thigh muscles, going up a little further and just noticing your pelvis, and noticing your stomach area. And as you're noticing these areas, also observe any sensations there, if there's any contraction or tension, or maybe it just feels light and it feels good. Just notice what's there. And coming back up into the chest area, and notice the movement of your chest with your breath. And the shoulders, noticing any tensions that might be there. And going down the arms and the elbows, into the forearms, the wrists and the hands, all the way to the fingers. And then feeling the neck and the head. And as we're going to go back down the other way, I'd like you to just kind of start moving a little bit, perhaps the neck and the shoulders, just seeing where they want to move. If there's a little tension there, and just kind of rolling the shoulders, kind of twisting a little bit, even letting the neck just kind of relax or drop. Doing some neck rolls. I would really just try and go organically with what feels good. So it's kind of like you're taking a little trip into your body, and you're this little person inside of those little tense areas, and you're the one stimulating the movement from those areas of tension. And just try and move a little bit the shoulders and see what feels good. or the neck. And then we'll go down to the chest area, kind of moving the chest. And even if you're seated, you can still do this. And moving, kind of twisting, little twists onto the side. And in the pelvis, kind of do some pelvis rotations. Even in the other direction, really get the energy flowing down all the way to the spine. So now it's kind of like you've got this serpent spine going all the way up to the top of your head. And you can even do it a little bit with your legs if you can, or if you're seated, just kind of stretch them out in each direction. See what feels good. Stretch open your toes, squeeze, stretch your knees. Just kind of go into what feels good. That's where your body wants to go. And then we'll just do a little kind of a re-energizing visualization. And what we'll do is we'll bring our hands kind of close together. Imagine that you're squeezing the air, that you're kind of squeezing this ball of air. And when the ball starts to feel a little bit denser, where you can almost feel kind of warmth from the other hand, if you can feel energy, we'll call that your energetic kind of aura. But if you can't, then just imagine that the air, where you feel the air is getting a little denser, that's kind of where it stops. And then what you're going to do in this little ball you have between your hands, you're going to imagine a really, really beautiful place in nature. Perhaps it's a fantasy that you've never been there, or perhaps it's an actual place that you've been and that you really love and you feel wonderful and relaxed and great or energized. Whatever energy it is you want to build inside of yourself right now, I'd like you to go to a place where you feel that, even if it's an imaginary place. And as you're imagine it's right there between your hands, and you can really see it. Imagine the vision, the place, the sounds, the smells, what's above you, what's below you, what's the left and the right. And as you breathe in this place, imagine the colors, imagine how you feel. And imagine perhaps there's even an element in this natural environment that you'd like to really hone in on. Maybe it's a tree or this like flower or rock or something in particular that feels like it could be a resource for you right now. The idea, okay, I find a natural element that's going to be a resource for me right now. And when you imagine that, just imagine that you bring into your body all the qualities of that natural element into your body right now. If it's a rock, it might be some sort of stability. If it's a flower, it might be lightness. Or if it's the water, maybe it's flow, whatever it is. And then I'd like you to just imagine that grows inside between your hands. Allow your hands to rise a little bit or widen a little bit. And as you take that, I'm going to allow you to just go in whatever way you want to do, as if you're going to give yourself this bath of the feeling of the resource of that element. Like whatever qualities it wants to give you, just kind of go around your body as if you're just bathing yourself in the quality of this element. And just washing it over you, and really breathing it in. And then finally, we'll just place our hands in a place that feels good on our body. If it's the heart, the solar plexus, the belly. Yeah. Maybe it's the lower belly, maybe it's your legs. And just let your hands land somewhere that feels good and helpful for you right now. And notice the feeling of the hands on that place on the body. And we'll just breathe 3 more times. And really bring in this quality of this little experience of nature or this element. Checking in with your body. And then just to finish, what you can always do as you kind of come back is just kind of, shake it out a little bit, like kind of let everything just shake a little, even if you want to be like, but let their tongue kind of shake over your face. Yeah. You
Woo!
can self hug, mini twist, whatever feels good. And at that point, it's like, okay, body, what do you want to do now? Are you ready to go back to work, or are you ready? Like, do you need to go out? Like, okay, body, now that I've checked in with you, do you feel good? Are you ready? Is there something else I need? So basically what we did, if we do a really short recap, we did 3 breaths, we did a scan of the body, and then we let the body just kind of move how it wanted to. And then we went to a really beautiful natural place that we feel good in. We found a resource, and we allowed that resource element to just bring in its qualities into our whole body. And we finished with 3 breaths.
I feel amazing.
Yay.
I did. And I went with water. It was interesting. I went to a place where there's a meadow, lots and lots of grass with these high mountains, and there's a crystal clear stream running through the meadow. Yeah, it's beautiful.
So
I was 5 minutes, just 5 minutes to feel better and more connected to yourself. And I can't help it, Carly, in my paradigm, and I want to check this out with you, those kind of check-ins, that kind of getting connected to self actually boosts our productivity and our creativity. So all these things we think are so important will probably get done more efficiently and perhaps in a more inspired way. Do you think that's true?
Absolutely. It's absolutely true. I noticed that even when I start hitting up against a wall, for example, it's like if I take, okay, I know we're probably not being like doing construction something, but when I was constructing and I'm like, I'm not getting it right, then the screw's going in wrong. This is like, and you're like fighting and pushing and pushing and pushing. And then you just stop and you do something else and take a breather. And then when you come back, it's like, oh, it's working. Okay, maybe not, the construction's probably not the best example. But at a certain point, we go into a kind of overload zone, and we're not able to be as clear and focused as we usually are. And so just stepping out for a second, getting connected and focusing and being more present is absolutely going to be a more efficient way of being able to use our time in work. I noticed when I was working, 4 or 5 hours a day on the internet, and I would take my breaks every 1 hour and a half or 2 hours. When I came back, I was like, yes, let's go. I was just excited and focused and knew what I was going to get done. And it just went super clearly and with much less effort. So it's definitely efficient.
Efficient, and it feels good. So,
and it's good for you.
So before we go, I just want to make sure that the viewers know how to reach you. It's carlycocreations.com, right?
Carly Co-Creation without an S.
And that's creation.
CARLYKO creation.com.
And what are they going to find when they go over there?
Well, I do actually have a free somatic toolbox, which is about finding spaciousness and time in your life. Isn't that funny?
Awesome.
And it's funny we're talking about that today, because I actually have a more detailed description of one of the exercises that we talked about how to figure out what's good for you in your life and how to figure that out in your timing and to be able to schedule it. So I actually have that for free on my website. That's right away there. And then you can see my other options of things, if it's one-on-one therapy, online workshops. I'm also a somatic masseuse in the Bay Area. And,
right.
Yeah.
Just wonderful. And by the way, we don't have time to go down this road, but I love that you built a house. So you're an amazing woman. And I'm so really very, very grateful that you led us through this exercise and graced us with your presence today.
Yeah, it was really fun. You're such a fun person. It's very easy to do an interview with you.
Thank you, Carly. Thank you. Well, we'll have you back. Thank you so much.